PlayStation State of Play was dreadful. But why was that? Many of us feel that the future outlook for gaming in 2024 is pretty dire. I have got to say though that Sony's presentation did very little to change my perspective on the way that gaming is going right now. If anything, it just confirmed my current beliefs that I've already got with regards to the Sony brand, or should I say Sony bland, and the current state of modern gaming as it is at the moment. State of play, more like look at the absolute state of it. Okay, so let's get into it. The presentation overall was just over half an hour long, but an entire third of it, as in the first third of the whole presentation, was dedicated to just one game, and that game is called Concord. So for an entire 6 minutes into this allotted time for the presentation, which was actually over half of the actual slot for Concord, all we were shown at that point was a story-driven cinematic. This led me to believe that we were getting something exciting and story-driven like Mass Effect, but more modern. But no, they put all of that time and effort into revealing nothing more than a stereotypical 5 versus 5 Zoomer shooter. So yes, it reminds me of Fortnite and that sort of type of game to look at. Also, because of that cinematic, after that I felt a bit misled, and that led me to then feel dubious and suspicious of every single game that they showed thereafter in the presentation. So this Concord game is a classic example of what CEOs have been promising all of their investors that they're going to be doing more of recently. Those multiplayer service games where, rather than paying for the game just once upon purchase, you end up paying hundreds of dollars eventually through microtransactions, and drip feed Sony wasting money on things like skins that have no real world value. The game feels very much targeted at Generation Alpha and Zoomers. Older gamers, let's be honest, aren't going to be interested in a game where you have to keep paying to play it, whereas what we're used to is you buy a game and then you play it. It's what we've grown up with. Bit different for Generation Alpha. Like, they haven't generally got as many financial responsibilities as older people, whereas we're sat there having to think sensibly about our money and can we really afford to do that, and so on and so forth. Whereas Zoomers, on the other hand, they're more likely to be living at home with their parents still and not have as much financial responsibility. So they've got a bit more money to spend, and I think that's what companies like Sony and these other CEOs at these other big gaming development houses and so on and so forth, they're looking at that now and looking on at it very greedily and wondering how they can tap into that money that all of the Zoomers have got to spend because they haven't got to worry about things like mortgages and household bills. The long and short of it is, the game's simply not for me, and I don't think that it was ever intended to be for people like me either. Amusingly, it actually reminds me of that cancelled Sega service game called Hyenas, where they poured in loads of money and it was really, really expensive for them to make, and then they canned it. That's what it reminds me of, that. So next up on this extremely exciting presentation was God of War Ragnarok, which is a game that I thought might already exist on the PS5. Oh yeah, it does. So rather than being included in the trailer to make PlayStation 5 owners feel excited about the future of the console, nope, instead it's been included because they've just announced that it's going to be released on PC. I for one am all for as many multi-platform games as possible, but my issue with this is literally just down to pedantry. This is a presentation for the PlayStation 5. This is PC news, not PlayStation news. In fact, if I'm completely honest with you, I think the only reason that they included it was because it gives you the option to pre-order it at the end. Now, apart from the fact that I think that pre-orders on PC digital only games are really dumb, I think that they've done it just to gauge the interest levels. They want to see how many people actually put down for a pre-order of this game for PC. I think that was literally the whole entire point of them including that in this presentation. I can't see any other logical reason as to why they would do that. So the following announcement was for Dynasty Warriors Origins, and it feels like there's already hundreds of Dynasty Warriors games, and I like those games. I like that series, but I'm not desperate for a new one. That's not something that's getting me all fired up, like I really badly want to rush out to get that one, if I'm completely honest with you. Because I've still got so many older versions that I'm yet to play through. Also, for me, if I'm completely honest, it doesn't feel as exciting as, say, Fire Emblem Warriors or Hyrule Warriors, if I'm honest. Something else that's put me off the game a little bit is the fact that it's just another title announced that's set in feudal Japan. And at the moment, it feels like every other game being announced is set in feudal Japan. And generally speaking, I like feudal Japan type things, but there's so many at the moment. There's been a flurry of games being announced. It's so samey. There's nothing interesting about it anymore. It's not unique. It just feels like, oh, feudal Japan is the flavour of the month, just like zombies was flavour of the month for bloody ages a few years back. And then we've got thousands and thousands of superhero related games that are all out. It just gets boring after a while when there's like no variety. I think I've just clicked why it's annoying me so much. They're making feudal Japan stuff feel basic bitch. Like zombie games started feeling really basic bitch, and modern Marvel feels really basic bitch sometimes, and I'm like, that's why I feel like it's being ruined for me. But that's just my personal take. Like, if you feel differently, not a problem. Infinity Nikki. Now, when this part of the presentation came on, my children were being absolute pickles, so I wasn't able to concentrate on it properly to begin with. So I literally thought that this was some kind of like weird dress-up game for little girls. I had to watch it through again a few times afterwards to start to understand or grasp what the hell that game is. So upon my second inspection, I did notice that there were some platforming elements in the trailer. I've got to say that I feel that the trailer doesn't show enough of what's going on for me to be able to form a decent opinion on it, much more than, oh, look how pretty the dresses are. Because at the moment, it just feels like it's probably going to be a relatively simple platformer for, I don't know, little girls maybe. That being said, is it for little girls or is it for them weird brony types who are into games where you dress up your character, kind of like Final Fantasy X-2 or Lightning Returns, that sort of thing? So yeah, the game is very pretty looking, but I'm not actually sure who it's designed to appeal to, because normal women are not going to be interested in that game. Like, it's not going to become a talking point with the mums outside the school, for example. I can't see this game as being the one that's going to inspire some lady from around the corner to go buy a PlayStation 5. It's not going to be the one, if I'm honest. The following trailer on the presentation was for a game called Ballad of Antara, and it showcases a man carrying a little girl on his back whilst sort of traversing through quite a dark and gritty, scary looking world. It was almost like a little bit Dark Souls-ish, I suppose. I feel like it's clearly supposed to be appealing to that dad gamer demographic. It certainly looks appealing to me. I like it. At the moment, it doesn't look like anything that would be like so special that I would rush out to go purchase it day one. It's not one of those for me. It looks like it would be a fun game to pick up and play somewhere down the line, but it's not one that I'm rushing out for. So unless it has got review scores which are glittering and sparkling like Bald and Bankrupt's scalp, then I shan't be rushing out to go pick that one up on day one. So the next game was called Skydancer's Behemoth. It looked fairly cool, like it reminded me somewhat of Skyrim, but also reminded me a bit of like Shadow of the Colossus, with the size of some of the monsters that are walking around that like literally stamp on you. I kind of lost interest in the game a bit the moment I realised that it's a PSVR 2 game, because at the moment, for me, you're looking at about 440 quid to purchase a PSVR headset. And that's just a lot of money to outlay to get games which often feel gimmicky and don't often have a huge amount in the library. So it's not one that I'm overly interested in, even though I do think that it would be a cool game to play. The next trailer that they showed was so short that it came across as more of a teaser trailer than anything else, and that was for Alien Rogue Incursion. With that, it seemed that the point of this tiny little teaser trailer was to see how many people they can get to put this game into their wish lists. But again, the game's a PSVR 2 game. So apart from the fact that I find the Alien games far too scary to play, it's not one that I'm going to be putting in any form of wish list. The next game that they announced made me audibly groan once I saw it, because I just thought, oh no, that is everything that I don't want in a game. The name of the game is Marvel Rivals, and it's very much a smooth brain service microtransaction PvP zoomer shooter game with modern Marvel characters in it. And it's based in feudal Japan. It's like, oh, every element that is pissing me off with games at the moment is present in this one. Like, if you're the sort of person that likes that sort of game, then good for you, that's fine. But for me, I couldn't think of anything worse. Where Winds Meet is a game that they've announced which looks absolutely bloody gorgeous. However, shock, horror, surprise, surprise, it is another one of those feudal Japan trope games. I'm getting so fed up with this. Like, I don't actually dislike feudal Japan, as I said earlier. Like, feudal Japan stuff and then ancient East Asia stuff in general, I always find interesting normally. But when it's being announced in every other game at the moment, it's just boring the hell out of me. On the trailer, there was one thing that particularly stuck out to me though, which was this part where they're flying through bamboo, and it just reminded me of that absolutely gorgeous scene in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon where they're having a fight in a bamboo forest. And that scene just like sticks out in my mind as being just outrageously beautiful. So it was nice to get that kind of alpha wave from this trailer. But again, I don't feel particularly excited for this game because there's just so many. It doesn't feel unique to me at all. So the next game was Until Dawn, which I have no idea whether they need to re-release this onto the PS5. You've got it on a PS4 disc. Just pop it into your PS5 if you want to play it. But for those who don't know about Until Dawn already, it plays like a proper decent 90s slasher horror flick. Like, it's a fun concept, it's a fun game. Like, in the game you can avoid your characters having unnecessary deaths. So like, depending on your playthrough, everyone can die, some people can die, or no people can die. It's got quite a fun story to it. And it's also got, like in any sort of horror movie, an all-star cast, in the sense that there's recognisable faces in that game. Like, you'll play it and then you'll see someone that you know who they are, like Rami Malek, for example, or Hayden Panettiere is in it as well. It's a pretty cool game, but I do not see why they need to Naughty Dog this one. Next up, they had Path of Exile 2, which I can't really say much about because I have never played that sort of game ever. But I do need to say that it looks like it's got a lot more substance to it than the Zoomer shooters that they've announced. Apart from that, there was inclusions on it that I really appreciated. For example, couch co-op, which I think is much healthier than playing with people over a headset. They also have crossplay on it, which I thought was quite good, which means that we don't have to own the same type of console to be able to enjoy the game together. The more and more I actually looked at the trailer, the more and more I actually thought I might give that a go eventually. It looks like quite an interesting and fun game. I've never had to go on that sort of game before, so it'd be interesting to give it a go. So the next game that they talked about was Silent Hill 2, which is a game that I'm actually genuinely excited about coming out. Only because I've anticipated that ever since they've done the remakes for Capcom's Resident Evil games, I've been really looking forward to there being a possibility of the Silent Hill games being remade by Konami. For me, this one feels almost like, I wouldn't say like a dream come true, but something that I think is pretty cool. For me, like, Silent Hill was one of those games that on the original PlayStation, I found it so scary. It gave me nightmares for flipping years after I played the demo. So I've only ever been able to sit and watch other people play that. But this version, I will get it. Whether it be a day one purchase or not, I don't know. Because it's one of those games I'll have to gear myself up to be able to play it. But yeah, I definitely am interested in this game. It looks pretty cool. I've seen a couple of people online who weren't overly enamoured by the graphics, but because I'm very much a gameplay over graphics type person, it doesn't bother me. I thought it looked fine. And the voice acting is definitely a step up. It's definitely a step up. This is one of the announcements that I was somewhat less negative about. Let's just put it that way. The next game that had been announced was Monster Hunter Wilds, which is a game that, in very typical Capcom fashion, has just had game after game after game after game released on it. And I'm kind of feeling the same about this one as I felt about the Dynasty Warriors announcement, in the sense that it's just not one that I feel any excitement about at all, if I'm honest. That being said, I've never got on with the Monster Hunter games. I've had to go on a few of them, and I just can't get into them. It's also one of those games that has been wildly popular in Japan, but outside of Japan it's just never quite hit the mark. There are lots of people who do like it, but it's just not got the same levels of popularity as it does over in Japan. So it's not one I'm going to be rushing out to get. They say save the best till last, and this presentation did do that in the sense of Astrobot. So Astrobot is going to be the follow-up to Astro's Playroom, which my boys really like. So as soon as I saw this trailer come up, I called both of my children into the room and they both watched it and they were absolutely rapt. They were so excited. So that's definitely going to be something that we rush out to buy, just because I know that my boys are going to really like it. The way that Astro's Playroom sort of showed off all of the features for the PlayStation 5 controller, it definitely looks like the gameplay elements, they've gone bigger and bolder with this Astrobot game. It looks like they've taken all of the good elements of the previous one. It looks like that they've built upon those. There's a lot more bosses. It looks like there's a lot more diverse environments. The game looks really fun. It does. It looks really fun. It looks like a really enjoyable little experience. It was very different from everything else that they announced. It actually really stood out. It looked truly unique, because everything else just looked hyper realistic or a bit anime. This one, there's no people in it. It's just robots, and it just looks like good, innocent fun and nothing more. So overall, with the exception of Astrobot, I feel like everything looked a bit samey. There wasn't anything apart from Silent Hill 2, which particularly excited me, and I had already known that Silent Hill 2 was more or less in the works anyway. It wasn't that much of like a get up and dance type thing. Astrobot has stood out because like my children were so excited about that when Grandma came over to visit earlier on today, they even told her about it. Even sort of remembered when I said, yes, that'll be a game that we pick up when you're back in school again for the new year. I think the main thing that's really bothering me is all this presentation has done is made me feel nostalgic for the PlayStation 1, when you had like a true amount of diversity for games. Because like when you think of the PlayStation 1, what do you think of? Crash Bandicoot, Tomb Raider, Final Fantasy 7, Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evil, Gran Turismo, Parappa the Rapper, Silent Hill, Croc, Spyro, Tenchu. There's so much diversity in gameplay, art styles, music, like genres. There was just so much diversity, and I feel like that diversity is now gone. I feel like it's all just hyper realistic and worrying about everything ticking all of these corporate boxes. It's just not, it's not the same way that it was before. Like, you can't just buy a game and then it's yours and then you enjoy it forever. You've got to buy a game and then like flipping spoon feed microtransactions back to Sony to keep them alive. I don't like it as much as I used to, which is sad to say because I love gaming. I game every single day, and I'm just not excited about the PlayStation anymore. So they're going to have some pretty cool announcements come up for me to get excited about anything, because as it stands at the moment, there was only really one game on there that I particularly want to go out and get, and again, it can be argued that that's a nostalgia purchase. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and if you fancy having up to 90% off of a brand new game, then please click on my instant gaming affiliate link in the description and or in the pinned comment. See you next time.